The mystery of the missing WhatsApps questions tonight over Boris Johnson's pandemic phone. The former PM says he's bypassing the Cabinet Office and sending details of his messages and notes direct to the COVID inquiry. But most potent material may well be on an old phone, which he says he's forbidden to turn on.
It does seem very odd that people didn't think before they told Boris Johnson to close his phone down, yes, to make a record of the contents. And it also seems odd that our security professionals couldn't find a way of downloading the contents of this phone.
Boris Johnson was told to turn off the phone, deemed a security risk, in April 2021, when the worst of COVID had passed. Are we really to believe the messages are irretrievable? Also on News at 10 tonight. Philip Schofield bears all. He says he's broken and ashamed, but denies grooming. At least 50 dead and hundreds injured in a train crash in eastern India. Jose Mourinho charged by UEFA for swearing at English referee Anthony Taylor, who then suffers appalling abuse at the airport. And
in peace, our enemies can rest.
Pitch perfect, the legend of Man U, Eric Cantona, striking out with a career in music.
I wrote the music and I wrote the lyrics. I wrote the script for the video. I directed the video. I can do everything except being humble.
This is ITV News at 10 with Julie Etchingham.
Good evening. For all Boris Johnson's claims that he's willing to give the COVID inquiry everything it wants, perhaps the most crucial hoard of information apparently remains beyond reach. Locked away on his old mobile phone are all his messages from before May 2021, which of course is when all the key events and decisions of the pandemic mainly occurred, on lockdowns, on care homes and more. Many might reasonably ask, why not simply turn it on then? Mr Johnson says he's been told it's not safe to do so, but would like the Cabinet Office to try. Cybersecurity experts have suggested the risk in doing so would be minimal. What's on that phone is just one of many questions the inquiry has, some of which may be pretty uncomfortable for the former PM.
It was when the worst of the pandemic was over that Boris Johnson switched phones. He'd been told it wasn't safe to keep the old one because his number was on the internet. But why has he only now offered to hand it over? Some find that puzzling.
It does seem very odd that people didn't think before they told Boris Johnson to close his phone down, yes, to make a record of the contents, given that ministers are using their phones for all kinds of government-related business. So that seems odd. And it also seems odd that our security professionals couldn't find a way of downloading the contents of this phone without having to give it access to the internet and therefore make it potentially vulnerable to others to hack into.
The former Prime Minister, seen jogging yesterday with a different phone, has said he's handed over more recent messages. But the COVID inquiry chair, Baroness Hallett, believes the missing WhatsApps could help answer questions she's posed in a list just published, including: why did you not attend any COBRA meetings in relation to COVID-19 prior to the 2nd of March 2020? Please confirm whether you suggested to senior civil servants and advisers that you be injected with COVID-19 on television to demonstrate to the public that it did not pose a threat. Did you state that you would rather let the bodies pile high than order another lockdown, or words to that effect?
Yeah, I've just chaired a COBRA meeting on coronavirus, and I think
it was only in March that he chaired a COBRA meeting. It was another 3 weeks before he ordered a lockdown.
You must stay at home.
So did the government act too slowly? Were crucial mistakes made? Others whose messages could come under the spotlight include Rishi Sunak himself, Steve Barclay, now Health Secretary, Michael Gove, Kemi Badenoch, as well as the former Prime Minister Liz Truss. Among doctors who worked on the front line, the questions facing ministers seem all too obvious.
I think we could have had better provisions in the country for PPE. I think the decisions to take people from hospital and put them into care homes was devastating for many elderly people. I think lockdown could have happened earlier.
In less than 2 weeks, the COVID hearings will begin. For all the legal wrangling, they could be explosive.
And Libby joins me now. I mean, my God, what a mess this week has been. This story's dominated, hasn't it? What impact is this likely to have on the inquiry, and could it delay it?
I think that's unlikely. The government has got this judicial review. It doesn't look like it's going to take very long, but equally it doesn't look like the government is going to win it. The former Justice Secretary, Robert Buckland, saying today that he felt it was a fool's errand, that in the end, the judge chairing the inquiry, Baroness Hallett, would get her way, saying that she was the one who could decide what evidence is relevant. But I think the government has been very keen to make a point about the fact that ministers should have some kind of expectation of privacy in the WhatsApp age. And I think they are seeing this very much as a test case. And they're even, I understand from reports tonight, exploring other legal options to keep control over the flow of information. The problem for Rishi Sunak, though, is that this looks politically very, very bad indeed. He's the man who presented himself as the face of integrity, a new face, as it were, in contrast to his predecessors, as he wanted to portray himself. And I think this effectively looks like he is trying to withhold information from a very critical inquiry that was set up into how 200,000 people in this country came to lose their lives. And I think for many people, they will conclude that there is something going on in government, and they will be asking tonight, what has he got to hide? OK,
Libby, thank you very much indeed for that. To India now, where in the last few minutes officials have said at least 80 people are thought to have died, with more than 800 injured after 2 trains collided. It appears that one derailed and hit another. The crash happened in Balasore, near India's eastern coast, about 140 miles from Kolkata. India's Prime Minister said as much help as possible is being sent to the scene, where rescue teams will be working through the night, searching for people trapped in the wreckage.
Chaos and confusion as passengers and rescuers clamber over a train carriage on its side. They're looking for survivors. Bodies of the injured and the dead are taken from the site on foot. The wounded are ferried to emergency care at a local hospital as medics shout orders. One survivor explains what happened.
I boarded the train around 6:40 p.m. and within 10 minutes I heard a big sound. When the train began to overturn, we realised there had been an accident. I jumped out of my coach and rescued a couple of people. I was helped by a passerby who also gave me medicine.
The crash happened in eastern India, around 130 miles south of Kolkata. A Railway Ministry spokesman said coaches from the Shalimar-Chennai Coromandel Express derailed. Some of the debris landed in the path of a train coming in the opposite direction. It too partially derailed. At least 80 people are believed to have died. Around 200 were trapped. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has already sent his condolences. In this hour of grief, he tweeted, "My thoughts are with the bereaved families. May the injured recover soon." More than 12 million people ride 14,000 trains across India every day. Accidents are frequent, but this is a major disaster.
There have been quite a few occasions where passengers' trains have also got derailed and there have been deaths. But this is a very major tragedy which has struck the country today, and a lot of people are feared dead.
Nearly 500 police officers and rescue workers with 75 ambulances have worked through the night. Soon, they'll be assessing the wreckage and likely recovering more bodies at dawn. Nick Wallace, News at 10.
In front of a camera for the first time since walking off the set of This Morning, the emotional and mental impact the past 2 weeks was written all over Philip Schofield's face. In his first interview since leaving ITV, the former presenter said the support of his daughters had been crucial to getting through recent days. He also said he didn't believe anyone else had known about the affair with a younger man. That claim is sure to be challenged when ITV's boss faces MPs and through an external review. As for his own future, Schofield said his career is over.
I have brought myself down. I am done. I have to talk about television in the past tense, which breaks my heart.
In interviews with the BBC and The Sun, Philip Schofield says his TV career of over 40 years is finished, and the past few weeks have had a serious impact on his mental health.
It is relentless, and it is day after day after day after day. And if you do that, if you don't think that that is going to have the most catastrophic effect on someone's mind, I have lost everything. And if my girls hadn't been there, I wouldn't be here, because I don't see a future.
It's the first time he's appeared on camera since admitting an affair with a much younger and more junior colleague on This Morning. He also defended the programme, denying there's any toxic culture. In the studio, there were tears as today's hosts reflected on his words.
I'm just finding it really painful because obviously, you know, I loved Philip Schofield, and it's weird because I still love Philip Schofield. However, what he's done is wrong. He's admitted it, he's said sorry. But as a family, we're all really struggling to process everything.
This Morning bosses have confirmed Holly Willoughby will return to the show next week. But with an ITV external review still to come, it doesn't yet draw a line under the matter for Schofield.
I think a lot of the damage has been done, but I do think by him coming on and saying, no, this wasn't the case, this is incorrect, it has limited potential further damage, I'd say, by him putting that point across.
Schofield admits he lied when ITV investigated rumours about him and the young man.
He was asked quite a bit. I was asked a couple of times. So, you know, it's... and it wasn't formal. But, yeah, I mean, I think, bearing in mind that there were two people who were absolutely intransigent in their denial, that it would have been pretty hard.
But while he claims there was no cover-up or abuse of power, ITV's boss will face questions from MPs later this month on the broadcaster's approach to safeguarding. Martha Fairley, News at 10.
Now, it's been a pretty miserable year for those who regularly use the country's rail network. 12 months ago, members of the RMT went on strike, and industrial action by them and other unions has been a feature of train timetables ever since. And there's no end in sight to the disputes, with action tomorrow hitting the FA Cup final and many other events. And Chris is here just to talk us through. I mean, we've had 12 months of this and now a lot of disruption in the days ahead.
I think the word you use there, miserable, is absolutely right, particularly for today. Only about half of trains ran. Those that did get underway finished early, starting at around 6:30 tonight. A miserable anniversary coming up, a year of this kind of disruption. And today, Mick Lynch, the union leader, gave not a glimmer of hope that things will be resolved.
We've not got any negotiations going on at the moment, so we want to get the companies back to the table. We want the government to facilitate a settlement, and we have to keep going in this dispute. It's part of an ongoing campaign.
Now, tomorrow, I'm afraid, things get even worse. Another union, ASLEF, the Train Drivers Union, is striking, and just look at some of the big events that are going to be affected by that. We, of course, have got the FA Cup final at Wembley. We've got a big concert with Beyoncé in London. We've got one in Manchester featuring Elton John. We, of course, have got the Epsom Derby as well. Around 30,000 strikers are thought to have been taking part today and tomorrow. And look at the cost of all this. A year of rail disruption costing about £5 billion to the economy, according to RMT estimates. The big message for anybody thinking of travelling tomorrow is check before you leave, because the timetables are just a shadow of what they normally are. OK, thank you for that, Chris. And there is indeed a full breakdown of how train operators are affected by tomorrow's strike over on our website.
Now, Jose Mourinho often inspires loyalty from his players and fans, a leader they look to as an example they follow. So it'll be hard for him to wash his hands of what happened to British referee Anthony Taylor and his family at Budapest airport. A mob hurled abuse and even a chair at them after he oversaw a fiery Europa League final in which Mourinho's Roma were beaten. In between those events, he was filmed giving Taylor a piece of his mind in no uncertain terms. Today, UEFA stepped in, charging Mourinho over his conduct.
Abuse is nothing new for referees, but Anthony Taylor is a long way from the stadium and fearing for his family's safety. Weaving through the airport, he shields them from a violent crowd. Is football really prepared to accept this behaviour towards its officials? The previous day at the Europa League final, Taylor, he said, "The lads lost a match and I lost it as well, but we haven't lost our dignity, the opposite." Minutes later, he was anything but dignified. As Taylor was trying to leave the ground, Mourinho unleashed and wouldn't stop. Today, there's been widespread support for the English referee.
I'm so sorry for the images I saw for Anthony Taylor. I'm so sorry. So hopefully don't happen again.
That was echoed by UEFA, who have charged Mourinho for his outburst and said it vehemently condemns violent behaviour directed towards its referee Anthony Taylor and his family. Such actions are unacceptable and undermine the spirit of fair play. And this is not an isolated incident. Mourinho has already paid hundreds of thousands of pounds in fines to the footballing authorities for multiple offences against referees. In the Premier League, Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp was handed a 2-game touchline ban last month after a tirade against a match official. Fulham boss Marco Silva was also banned for comments after one of his players pushed another referee at the close of the season. But we've never seen anything like this before, where abuse not just of an official, but his family continues long after the final whistle. Amy Lewis, News at 10.
Now, in the United States, it's already a crowded field to be the Republican candidate to take on President Biden in the next year's election. Another contender expected to join the race next week is former Vice President Mike Pence. He's just received some rather timely news that he won't face criminal charges over the discovery of classified documents at his home, something for which his former boss and the current frontrunner Donald Trump is still very much under investigation.
Mike Pence exuded a quiet confidence as he took to the stage this week in Michigan. His campaign hasn't officially started, but today's news he won't face charges for improperly retaining classified documents is bound to energise his launch next week. The contrast with his former boss, Donald Trump, is growing ever more stark. When he left office in January 2021, boxes of classified documents were taken to his home in Florida. The FBI raid there uncovered highly sensitive material in a storeroom. This week, it was reported the FBI also has a recording of a meeting here at Trump's golf complex in New Jersey, where the former president boasted about having another secret document detailing options for attacking Iran. That classified paper still hasn't been found.
News broke yesterday that there might be a tape recording that...
Last night, Donald Trump tried to deflect questions about it.
No, I don't
know anything about it. All I know is this: everything I did was right. We have the Presidential Records Act, which I abided by 100%.
But Trump has previously suggested he had the power to declassify whatever he wanted at will.
There doesn't have to be a process, as I understand it. You know, there's different people say different things, but as I understand, there doesn't have to be. If you're the president of the United States, you can declassify just by saying it's declassified, even by thinking about it.
Jack Smith, the special counsel investigating the matter, is thought to be days away from charging Trump. Experts think Trump's unwillingness to cooperate may be a defining aspect of this case.
It's claiming we don't have the documents, giving some documents back and saying, okay, this is all we have, when that wasn't true. forcing the government to come back again and again, had to get a subpoena, having to get a search warrant, moving documents around to try to hide them from investigators potentially. And even today, they don't know that they've gotten everything back.
The National Archives has acknowledged that every president since Reagan has mishandled classified documents. Some were found in the garage of President Biden after all. But the difference with Donald Trump is whether he did it knowingly and then tried to cover it up. Dan Rivers, News at 10, Washington.
Now, short of finding a cure, discovering a means of detecting cancer as early as possible has long been an ambition of scientists and the ardent wish of those who've suffered at its hands. Now, a blood test designed to do just that has shown promise in an NHS trial. It can tell doctors whether there are signs of more than 50 types of cancer. It's still being refined, but experts say there is plenty to be optimistic about.
It is the biggest study in patients with suspected cancer symptoms, looking at distinct changes in genetic codes from different cancers. And researchers at Oxford University have documented a major breakthrough.
It really shows that there is a use for this type of test in symptomatic patients who might have cancer. And it really starts to pave the way for us understanding how best to integrate this test into investigations for cancer in the NHS.
Early results show the test correctly revealed 2/3 of cancers among almost 5,500 people in England and Wales who'd visited their GP with suspected symptoms. In 85% of those positive cases, it was also able to pinpoint the original source of the cancer. The test comes too late for Lynn Britton's daughter Lisa. She died from stomach cancer aged 39. Her initial symptoms weren't alarming and doctors first suspected IBS. By the time Lisa was diagnosed, the cancer had spread to her spine, lung and lymph nodes.
She said, "I've got 3 children, how long have I got?" And they said weeks. And she got 14 months. So we were living on like eggshells, thinking, we best do this with her, we best do that with her, making memories. Because we thought the time would just run out. We didn't know she'd be here tomorrow.
The hope is this blood test carried out by GPs can pinpoint cancers with non-specific symptoms much earlier. But this is very much work in progress and some are urging caution.
There clearly needs to be a lot more work done on a bigger sample size, and then we'll have a much better idea about both the potential benefits but also the potential downsides. And what we would want to avoid is large numbers of people being given a false positive test that suggests they might have cancer when in fact they don't.
We don't know when the blood tests may be rolled out, but a trial involving a further 1 million patients in England and Wales could begin next year. For now, it offers hope in the fight against a disease that brings so much heartache. Rachel Townsend, News at 10.
Cynthia Wilde, the Grammy-winning US songwriter responsible for hits like You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling, has died at the age of 82. Her other songs included On Broadway and Walking in the Rain. She co-wrote many hits with her husband of 62 years, Barry Mann. She died at her home in California, with her daughter describing her as brilliant, funny and beautiful. Now, we already know which city's name will be on the FA Cup come full time in tomorrow's final. They've already engraved Manchester on it. It's the first time City and United have met in the Wembley showpiece, and Pep Guardiola's Premier League champions are hoping to stay on track for their own slice of history. Win, and they just need to lift the Champions League next weekend to complete a treble of trophies. The only other English team to do the same? Well, no prizes for knowing that one.
Come on, you Blues! Come on, United! Nothing divides Manchester quite like these two colours. It's the first all-Manchester final in FA Cup history. Is this a city united by football?
Kidding.
Well, not quite.
The build-up to it, we don't really talk that much, and then...
No, we don't talk at all. And for those who can't yet speak for themselves...
Well, she can't make her own decision, but she can be a red. And then when she's old enough to speak, she'll tell us that she's a true blue.
And it doesn't matter if you're a red
or a blue, they don't come much bigger than this.
Scores!
Penalties at Wembley last month set up the historic derby.
Will be Manchester's day.
Already Premier League champions, City, with their unstoppable record-breaking scorer Haaland, have their eyes on FA Cup and European glory too.
Beckham into Sheringham, and Solskjaer has won it!
The only team to have ever secured the treble, tomorrow's rivals. And it's a title that Manchester United won't want City to take from them.
You know, with having Pep here, I knew that there will be a certain level that we will achieve sooner or later.
The FA Cup final is FA Cup final. Whoever you have to play against, your focus, your desire to win will be always the same.
And might succeed in doing so.
A man who knows what it means is Lou Macari. He scored an FA Cup winner for United more than 40 years ago.
That's the 1977 FA Cup winners' medal. The one thing about Wembley is you don't want to be going up those steps first, because that's to collect the loser's medal. I'll settle for a draw, I'll settle for extra time, and then I'll settle for penalty kicks.
You must have nerves of steel.
I've come to like it at Wembley.
There's less than 5 miles between the clubs, but decades of rivalry. Who'll have the bragging rights?
Come on, City!
We'll know this time tomorrow. Kelly Foran, News at 10.
And finally, turn back the clock a few decades, and it was Eric Cantona, not Marcus Rashford, being cheered on by the red half of Manchester. King Eric, as he was nicknamed by United fans, turned his hand to acting after hanging up his boots at the Theatre of Dreams. But he's not stopping there. Ever the performer, he's now showcasing another skill, his singing. The flamboyant Frenchman is even going on tour. And when Nina met him, it was clear time hadn't faded his famous self-belief.
The friends we lost, the time we waste.
Eric the chanteur.
The blood of a lovely flowers in peace our enemies can rest.
This is his new Theatre of Dreams, the music studio where the Manchester United legend is launching his first single, the latest episode in his post-football career.
You know, I wrote the music, and I wrote the lyrics, I wrote the script for the video, I directed the video. I can do everything except being humble.
The Man U fans adored the sometimes controversial player as he helped the team to cup and league glory in the 90s. Retiring from football at 30, he later turned to acting.
Et je suis Eric Cantona.
Here in the Ken Loach film Looking for Eric, lockdown signalled another change in direction.
I always wanted to be on stage, you know, live, in front of an audience, crazy. I think the adrenaline can be very strong. I think after sport maybe it's a stronger thing, or maybe stronger than sport, I don't know.
You only get to do it once.
He misses Manchester. Starring in a Liam Gallagher video gave him a connection to the city's music scene.
The trees when the houses fall.
And though his style may be very different, it is Manchester where he'll start his tour later this year. It's something that a lot of people will have been dreaming of, getting Eric back to Manchester.
Inspired me a lot for my music also, because I was in Manchester in the 90s, you know, where this time a lot of bands in Manchester. This city was very inspiring. It was a great movement of art, sports and everything. I don't know if the people will like it, but for sure, I love all the songs I wrote.
People still call you King in Manchester.
Yes.
There is already a king in the music world, and his name was Elvis.
There is only one king.
Who is
he?
They've long serenaded him.
When the house is full.
Now Eric Cantona is returning the favour. Nina Nanar, News at 10.
Oh, Eric, and he's sure to be singing a few United songs come kick off at Wembley tomorrow. That is it from us for tonight. From all the team here, have a lovely weekend. Good night.